Okay. So our team name is Sword, and it was just quick and dirty. Last name, initials, and then D for the D school.
So we believe in the design process.
We do believe in the design process, and that's a core function of our values and our mission. So our mission is to build high revenue, impactful, game-changing company through an iterative process. And the iterative process is key, and we're firm believers in accepting that process, and that's what's going to give us the energy to go do anything, even if it is one of those more boring or non-sexy industries. Because if we believe in this, that'll get us through the day.
In terms of attributes, we kind of separated out the company culture from more sort of bigger picture company attributes. So we said we'd like to have revenue within 2 years. And then we looked at sort of stepping back. If you look at this 5 years from now, what is the bare minimum that we would need to feel like successful and happy about it? Which maybe wasn't the best approach now that I think about it, because it might have been good to shoot for the moon, but we said we'd like to have at least 100 million in 5 years to feel like we've been successful. And we also want to be cash flow positive, at least within 5 years. We really want to be needs driven, not purpose driven. We centered all around not doing harm. It was interesting, not necessarily that the company has to be so for profit, but we all really believe very strongly that we don't want to create something that we feel like is harming the planet, or sort of forcing people to use a product that they don't really need, creating a need that we don't believe in. So that was important to us. And then we actually centered more around being US based. We'd be open to some global possibilities, but there were a couple ideas that we had that would require that the company be based in China, and folks weren't too excited about that. So US based.
So then part of our attribute, we kept coming through, and we found that we were talking about sometimes about the company and sometimes about, ourselves and what we wanted to have. So for the company culture, the underlying theme was we want to be a high-performing team. So as we look at this process and as we look at each other, we need to make sure that that's our key attribute. And for us, that meant having healthy conflict, so having enough tension and dissimilarities that we could have interesting conversations, but being able to have it in a healthy way and giving regular feedback. So we want to have weekly set meetings where we give feedback on what we're doing well and what we're not doing well. We really like that part of the process. We also want to have a work-life balance, and we want to have respect for each other in terms of how we do that. We know that this 6 months is going to be really intense, and people operate in different ways. Some people like to work till 2 in the morning, and some people don't. So making sure that we set goals for the week where we're all prioritized, but then allowing people the flexibility and trust to accomplish those goals in the way that we need to. And then the last piece was people first, just really believing in building up a quality team and respecting people that we bring onto the team. And kind of ties in with the work-life balance.
All right, so as we took a look at specific industries to focus on, we had a wide range from consumer-oriented tools, pet-oriented programs, online marketplaces, got into some manufacturing areas, a little bit about TV, but we found ourselves, when we went into healthcare, we saw many, many ideas kind of fall out of the healthcare realm. So this is an area that we began to focus on. And then leveraging some of the expertise that I have from previous business, we talked a lot about the workflow and the value chain between a customer or a patient getting service, turning that into something that the insurance companies can process. So I've talked to some of you guys about this, the idea being if you have pneumonia, that has to be turned into a code, a very specialized number that goes to the insurance company and then gets reimbursed based on that number. Turns out there are giant changes in the way this whole workflow is happening, and those numbers in particular. So if we can, like the value chain we talked about before, instead of disaggregating and spreading across to specializing, if we can become the central resource for this coding component, then we can increase some efficiencies, and that opens us up to some really interesting opportunities in the data mining space.
Yeah, so another subset of that is once we can become that aggregate of all doing the coding for all the hospitals, there's a huge data mining portion that we can do, because now we have all the national hospitals and the trends that are happening in the health environment on a national scale. And we can use that data mining and the trends we see from that, and we can see how it applies to other people. For example, it can help guide hospitals on what machines they need to buy. So if there's an upward trend in a certain ailment, you need more of that one machine to help deal with that. But also with the competitors as well. So the companies that actually make those products, they'll want to know like what products they should be making or prototyping for. So there's a whole nother component, not just alleviating the coding requirement that's going to be changing and automating this coding requirement. So it's pretty exciting.
Yeah. And then there were some key questions that we asked, so it was really helpful. Justin has the healthcare background, and the other three of us don't at all. And so I feel like got a basic understanding of the industry from him, and then probed him on a lot of different areas. One of the ones I had was, cost savings. So the coding today, what percentage of the hospital's cost structure is that? Because if it's 1%, they probably don't care if we're going to save them money on it. How frustrated are they today? How much of a pain point is it? It turns out some hospitals have internal coders today and some have external. We would be sort of an outsourced model, national, that would replace either of those. So it was unclear to me, what the real pain point is. It sounds like there's both inaccuracy in the coding today, and it's expensive and it takes a long time. So in theory, could we create a way to make the coding more efficient, have a QA system so that it doesn't have as many errors, and then lower cost? And then we also need to size the market. So how many hospitals have internal versus external coding? What's the total market size? How much are they spending on it? Who else would we be competing with today? Those kinds of questions. Is there?
Yeah, and kind of along those lines, so we have this idea that there's value in this data mining, but figuring out who those customers would be part of the viability process. So figuring out, is there a value for that? Do they want to pay for it? We think there is, but is that real? And the first questions were based around, you have to get people bought in and to even get to the point where you have that data. So can you get them bought in? And that's kind of a result of all the cost savings. One critical element we had about going into healthcare is Justin does have this experience in healthcare. How do we make sure as a team that we don't let him filter everything through his perspective to the point where we're not looking at the industry on a large enough scale? So that's something that we brought up that we want to stay aware of. So Vanessa and I are going to speak to the coders and to the direct piece. These guys are going to focus on the data mining so that filter isn't limiting in one direction, so that we can kind of think about it on the bigger picture.
And one other issue was the purchase cycle, the length and the frequency of it. So who in the hospitals is making the decision to hire these coders, and how often are they swapping them out? How long would it take? Because there's a big initiative, I guess, in 2 years, the coding system is going to completely be revamped, and that might be a good opportunity for us to convince them to switch to our platform. But do we have to wait 2 years? Would any of them switch today? It's unclear what that purchase cycle looks like. So trying to understand that is a key concern.
Awesome. Thank you, Team Sword.